Representative, Senator, thank you very much for being with us tonight. We have an interesting grouping here because, Representative, you are a freshman in the House, and Senator, you have had a couple of years in the legislature.
I am.
So you come at this with a different perspective. And let me start with the Senator by asking, what about Civil Rights 2001? Where are we?
Well, we've come a long way in my lifetime and in my tenure in the legislature, but we have a long way to go. We're about midstream, I'd say, and we're working hard to complete the job.
Representative, from a younger and less seasoned viewpoint, what would you say?
Yeah, I think I was born in the very day that Martin Luther King was buried, and so I think I didn't live through the time period where all the turmoil and all that stuff. So I see now where we've gotten access for me to be in the legislature there years afterwards. But now it's a matter of what we do with that access to create economic opportunity for everybody. So I see it as now we need to turn our focus toward economics.
There are any number of issues we can and probably will talk about tonight, issues affecting African Americans. One that comes to mind is the issue of profiling by police officers. Have either of you or both of you ever been stopped by a police officer where you were pretty sure it was a case of driving while black?
Sure.
Yeah,
I grew up in Birmingham in the 60s, and I was stopped many times because I was black, not because I was speeding, not because of any violation at all. But I think more significantly, people are stopped all the time, but a lot of times whites are let go while blacks get the tickets.
Do you believe that's still the case?
yes, I think undoubtedly being a young black male, there are many times you're stopped and it's really difficult to understand what the situation is, and there's no other reasons offered besides maybe you just look suspicious, and you find that to be very troubling.
One of your fellow representatives, Representative Holmes, passed in the seatbelt legislation the requirement that all of the statistics be kept on who gets stopped, who gets given a ticket, and who doesn't. Do either of you know where those statistics stand now, what they are showing?
I was interviewed last week, and the statistics were put in the Montgomery Advertiser. What it shows is that there is racial profiling, no question about it. The number of people that get tickets are black, disproportionate to our representation in the population. It was something like we're 25% in the population, 37% of the tickets given have been given to black people.
What other concerns in 2001 in the civil rights movement?
Again, I would say that turning our focus toward economics, making sure that there's equal opportunity to get access to capital for the starting of small businesses, just making sure we have the proper economic opportunities. Some of the things that we tend to think are racism is classism, and making sure that African Americans have the access to capital to start businesses and live the American dream like everybody else.
Let's take some phone calls, and our first caller is up from Birmingham. Welcome to For the Record.
This is Coleman.
Coleman, I'm sorry. Hello.
Yes. I would like to know if either of your guests feel, in light of slavery and the Dred Scott decision, which, as you know, is probably the worst decision the Supreme Court ever made, if reparations should be considered for black people.
It's an excellent question. I'm glad the caller brought it up because there actually is an effort now to file a class action suit on behalf of African Americans for reparations.
Yes. I think that to some extent we have had reparations in the past. During the 1960s, many of the civil rights leaders talked about compensatory aid at that time, and as a result of that, the poverty programs were established. So that was some form of compensation or some form of recompense for the evils that had been done to black people. That was the beginning of it. Much of it worked, much of it did not work. The Head Start program is probably the only thing that really remains that was significant out of that period. I don't think that you can make up for 300 years of slavery and 100 years of discrimination in 30 or 40 years. So there needs to be some compensation. There needs to be some effort to rectify what has happened in the past.
Do you mean financial reparations?
Well, financial reparations or programmatic reparations. I think that we have not achieved parity, and therefore we need to keep striving until we do that. I thought that the affirmative action programs was one form of reparations, and people seem to fight it, or at least the Republicans are fighting it, and it was a Republican program, oddly enough. We need something like that to try to level the playing field.
Representative?
Yeah, I'm in full agreement. I think that some form of reparations are due, but the question then becomes, how do you assess who gets what and how you go about doing it? So I think there's a problem in that manner. But I think if when the Japanese, there were some reparations made to them, undoubtedly nobody can deny the ills that's been done to African Americans traditionally in this country. So not to want to make good on that is something that I can't see how anybody could deny there's a need to make good on that.
You're right, it would be a difficult thing to administer, to determine, unlike the Japanese Americans who were kept in camps out west, it would be more difficult to say, do you have to have a line drawn directly to a slave of the past to prove that you are eligible?
Yeah, it would be very awkward. I'd like to put in a plug for American Indians as well, Native Americans, because this was their land and it was taken from them. And of course, it was built with our labor. So yeah, I think there's some reparations due, but how you do it is kind of problematic.
Environmental racism is another topic that gets talked about a lot, and especially in the Black Belt with efforts to place a landfill along the Civil Rights Trail. Do you buy into that charge of environmental racism, that dumps and places for garbage are placed intentionally in black neighborhoods?
Well, I don't know if they're intentionally placed there. I think that you have cheap land in black neighborhoods. The toxic waste dump over in the mill is an example of that. And of course, the effort to put a gigantic landfill in Macon County was an example. And of course, one in, I think it's Lowndes County, is one as well. There's plenty of vacant land in Alabama. I don't see why they always want to put it in a black neighborhood. It doesn't seem to make sense to me.
How about you, Representative?
I think too many times they target communities where they feel like there's going to be least resistance, and too many times in African American communities we don't put up the type of resistance necessary. I think there was one city in Jefferson County that they were trying to put a Walmart up. The community didn't want it. It was a primarily white community. They fought, and now we're going through something in Birmingham now with a medical waste facility that they're trying to put in the community. And I just think that when we don't put up the proper resistance and people see it as easy as putting those type of facilities in our community, and to some degree we have a responsibility to stand up and let it be known that that's not acceptable in our community. So I think we hold some responsibility in that area.
Should counties also have a responsibility, though, to handle their own waste by having a landfill, because not every county has a landfill?
Well, that's right. There should be some cooperative agreements amongst counties to provide space for landfills, and perhaps it should rotate. I mean, we have from now until infinity to take care of the problem.
It's a long time.
Plenty of opportunity for everybody.
Next caller is from Montgomery. Hi, you're on For the Record. Welcome.
Hey, how are you gentlemen
Good.
doing?
Okay.
Yes, sir. I just wanted to make a comment about this is Dr. King's birthday. I just feel that Dr. King's greatest legacy was that he stressed, cooperation between the blacks and the whites here in Alabama and the South. And one of the things that, just being new to Montgomery, that I've noticed is that the blacks and whites have always lived side by side with one another, and they've always worked together. But I see them separating now. I see people moving out of town. I see them leaving the small communities. I see them leaving places like Selma and Tuskegee and moving out east. And I know there are a lot of reasons why, but it just I hate it, and I see that trend continuing. And I just would like to ask the two callers what can be done about it. What can we all do to get along better? What we can do in our daily lives, in our work, just anything in general.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for the question.
Well, a lot of people are leaving the Macon County area. I think the census will show we've lost about 10% of our population since the last census. They're leaving for economic reasons. It's not because of race, I don't think. I think that people are getting along better now than they ever have before in this country. And I think also those that leave predominantly black communities to move to places like Arrowhead or Wind Lakes, they'll find that there's some black people there already when they get there. blacks have moved into the middle and upper income groups, and we're all over the place now. I think that we need to do some things to develop underdeveloped areas, be they white or black, across the state of Alabama, and Governor Siegelman has a program now to do just that. And I think that is the thing that we need to do, develop the economies.
It brings to mind, the caller's comment brings to mind the University of Alabama and the fact that the fraternities on campus are, as far as I know, still completely segregated, that there are all black and all white fraternities. Saying that that is voluntary, and I presume that it is, what do you force integration, or sometimes there's a voluntary segregation that occurs that you may not like, but what do you do about it?
I don't know. I think to some degree you have to face there are some cultural differences for how people are and be able to respect people for their differences. And then be able, I think we need more formats where people can have open discussions about how they truly feel. Too many times I think we're put in positions where where people feel the force socially to sugarcoat things rather than saying this is how we feel. I don't know if in Alabama or in America now we're at a state where we're honestly willing to have an open discussion about how people truly feel about race issues. So until a format like that is created where people can feel comfortable saying I don't like you and this is the reason why, then it's hard for people to bridge gaps because they dance around the real issues.
It's been said before that the most segregated hour of the week is Sunday morning.
Exactly.
But that is
the
changing.
vast majority of
But that is changing. It really is. Change comes slow when you talk about institutions like the church and fraternities. But things are changing. And I've seen us come from segregated water fountains and just complete segregation to where we are now, and I'm grateful for that. Yet I understand that we haven't achieved all that we can achieve.
Next caller is from Birmingham. Hello there.
Hello?
Hi.
Hello?
Yes.
Yes. Excuse me, I have somebody over here now. You want my question?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, I said it 3 times.
Yes, I want your question. Go ahead.
Okay. Back during the 40s when they bombed Pearl Harbor, they locked up all the Asian Americans.
Right.
What kind of...
Go ahead.
Came back later and paid and compensated the people, the Asian Americans.
Right. Yes. Is there a question?
We know they have programs like Head Start and, and all that, but it didn't help the people that supposedly got help.
So you're suggesting that there should be compensation?
Yeah, there should be some legal compensation.
Legal compensation?
Yes.
Financial compensation?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for the call.
We agree.
Yeah, we're in full agreement. I know we have a colleague in the Michigan legislature now that has a reparations bill that gives African Americans a tax exempt or status or something like that, and maybe that's something to look at. I don't know what the solution is, but it's definitely there ought to be some type of compensation made to people because you start out at different economic points because of the legacy of slavery or the legacy of Jim Crow and all those things. So it's undoubtedly there ought to be something done about it. And I agree with the caller.
Both of you are going to be facing a very difficult issue when the legislature meets on February the 6th, and that will be the reapportionment of districts,
Yes.
which race is a part, is certainly a part of reapportionment. Do you fear reapportionment? Do you think that there is a possibility you could lose some elected power or some political power?
There is that possibility, but we plan not to let that happen. There's always that danger, and of course I've been involved in court cases regarding my district, actually. And truth and righteousness seems to prevail every time, so we think that it will continue to do so. We have to fight to keep the districts pretty much the way they are.
The districts, if they are drawn, though, intentionally to create a Republican district, as in some cases they were, or to create an African-American district, as in some cases they were, it doesn't seem to be kind of fair. Why not just draw a district and whatever the population is?
Well, I think because we need to have fair representation in the legislature, and the only way to achieve that is to have districts where different types of people can win from those districts.
But you seem to be saying, Senator, that a white person is not going to be elected in a black district or vice versa. A black person is not going to be elected in a...
Not true at all. As a matter of fact, in Tuskegee, we now have a white female mayor pro tem. So, I mean, that's not true.
That was a city election.
That was a city election, but it's a district. It is an area. It is a geographical area. And I'm sure that there are some blacks. Ralph Cook, for example, was elected statewide to the Supreme Court. So was Oscar Adams. So, I mean, it can happen, but it's rare. Generally, people vote for people like them, that they see as being like them. And if you look at the legislature, you'll find that's pretty much true.
Yeah,
Representative?
and I do think we need to, as we look at reapportionment, make sure that everybody has access to the ability to win. You don't want to create districts where people, you look at the voting trends, and you can look at what happened on the state level with the Supreme Court, and we're still not at a point, in my opinion, in Alabama where white Alabamians are really willing to vote on mass numbers. It seems like we taken a couple of steps back, and that's troubling from the time when Ralph Cook could win to a point where he couldn't. And so there are some concerns. I think as we look at reapportionment, we should take those things into consideration as we sit down and draw districts. We need African-American representation in the legislature. I think.
Do you think that the black justices and judges who lost in this past election, do you think that they lost because of their color or because of their politics?
I think it was a combination of both. I definitely think race was a factor, but I think it might have been a combination of both.
Certainly, I think it was a combination of both. Ralph Cook ran on kind of general terms. The first time around, he was more pro-business, and as various court decisions came down, he moved a little bit to the left, and he lost the base that he had. That, coupled with the great Republican push and the presidential election, just wiped him out. So it was a combination of just pure politics, racism, and the particular decisions that those justices made.
Gentlemen, thank you both very much for being with us tonight. We look forward to dealing with you coming up in just a couple of weeks now when the legislature meets in session starting on the 6th of February.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Senator.
Thank you.
If you're interested in finding out more